we heard earlier about all these amazing, this amazing AI future with all these agents going to solve all our problems. What use are they if they can't transact and talk to each other? That's the ultimate question. So I guess financial services at the backbone of an agentic economy is maybe a little futuristic, but an important future that we're going to try and address a bit today. So I'm going to go through my panel here. We're pleased to be represented by some portfolio companies that have different perspectives on this, covering everything from identity to security to the instrument at hand and then the actual transaction itself. If I start over there with you, Julian, and like just give us a little intro about who you are, what your company does, and why there's a really interesting future. You don't have to talk about agentic yet. Leave that to me, and then we'll just go down the list, and then I'll fire some questions.
Yeah, hi, I'm Julian. If you haven't picked it up, I'm from Berlin, which is going to be important maybe later when we're talking about like federalistic or decentralized systems. I started at Deutsche Bank way back, found out it's not as meritocratic as I liked it to be. Went back into research, crowdfunding, and then got interested in the ICO boom back in 2017. I thought the whole stable token thing is going to happen a lot sooner. So here I am still trying to bring a sub-part that I feel is extremely important for it, which is identity, into that space. So idos is a decentralized data storage and access management system.
So hi, I'm Eleni. I'm the co-founder of LoopCrypto. So we do stablecoin payments. In particular, the thing that we're focused on is how do you have a pull model with payments and how that plays into data. So actually in the last panel, when it kept being brought up how you could get rid of these administrative tasks of approving or going through expense management, we see that as a payment data problem. And the issue is really your systems don't talk to each other, which is why it's difficult to get operational approval for something. And so if you can democratize the data part, then the payments come with it.
And I'm Arnoud. I'm running a company in the Netherlands called Quantoz Payments. It's an issuer of stablecoins. Actually started doing that well before MiCAR came into force. They figured out that if you call it e-money, and then talk very long to the regulator and explain that you can do e-money on a public blockchain, it might actually work. The company got a license end of 2023. And then MiCAR came around, which opened up the world of so-called open loop or secondary market tokens and expanded the number of use cases we could follow. So that's our core business. We are listed on 50 exchanges globally. But we've never had the ambition to be a stablecoin for crypto trading. It's really looking at corporate use cases and solving problems in the real world for CFOs, particularly as it comes to cash pooling, in-house banking, cross-border payments, workforce payments. Everywhere companies encounter friction in payment technology. We don't see stablecoins as something that is necessarily money in itself. We don't also believe that stablecoins will replace all forms of payment. It's just an additional payment technology for certain use cases. Super excited about autonomous economy and talking about it as well, but I have also dealing with regulators every day, particularly European regulators. I've also become slightly skeptical about how fast this is going to go and what you can actually do autonomously without touching the real world rules and the real world roads. So it's a discussion.
Hi everyone, I'm Charles. I'm with Resonance Security based out of New York City. I'm the founder. Resonance Security covers full spectrum cybersecurity, starting with like smart contract audits and pen testing, and then implements easy to use plug and play software that covers where 70 to 80% of hacks happen after those pen tests and audits. And before this, I worked at Citi, JP Morgan, Moody's, and Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation in money movement as well as security-related functions. Worked at a cybersecurity company where I brought 8 figures worth of revenue in a year and a half, met hundreds of blockchain companies and non-blockchain companies, and noticed they were getting hacked even after spending lots of money on engagements. So me and 3 world-class engineers started Resonance. Nice to meet you all.
Super. So different perspectives, but they're all startups here. But what I want to say first is I'm just back from Money 2020. And just before Money 2020, both MasterCard and Visa published their visions of agentic commerce, obviously using largely the existing tech in tokenized cards. But suffice to say that it's top of agenda for big companies. At Money 2020, there was several panels led by NVIDIA and Adyen on the future of agentic commerce. So these large companies are already thinking about it. The issue that I observed was many of them assume that 2 agents are meeting and transacting. They found each other. They've got amount of disposable spend agreed. They trust each other. They know who each other are. And the transaction happens sort of magically. Makes a lot of assumptions about this new world. I spent the whole weekend dealing with an unfortunate hack on my private Telegram, and one of my network basically called me up saying, "Do you realize there's somebody who's spoofing you?" And then you click on a Calendly link, and you get this Zoom link, and it's basically a video of me with AI superimposing my speech, saying, "Please download this software," etc., etc. So AI is both scary, but also hugely opportunistic and a huge amount of potential. I want to start with the real core issues here in hearing from Julian first and then Charles. Like, Julian, where does identity and trust fit into all of this, and how does the blockchain play a role?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only technology that allows us to have a decentralized way to establish that trust, right? If it's not supposed to be centralized. So if we're not supposed to trust one specific organization. And I mean, those hacks happen in small, they also happen in large. We're seeing that even $16 billion companies that are focused on identity cannot prevent those hacks. If we're taking a look at Okta, I mean, you probably can tell us more about that. So we need to build resilient systems that actually prevent that from happening. This is what we're trying to do, of course, right? And then there's this other aspect of it that you need to establish that trust. And that's not necessarily only about humans, but also those new things that could be agents. And so when preparing for this panel, I was thinking about, okay, so are agents an extension of ourselves? So are we supposed to just connect them to humans? Or are they their own thing? And as a society, we kind of came up with such a concept in the past, which is called corporates, right? Like, corporate are entities that are legally its own personas. And I do believe that the same thing will happen to agents, and you need to kind of register them somewhere. You need to identify them.
We'll come back to some of the implications of that. I mean, Charles, obviously you've been helping me out all weekend, so thank you very much. But that's me as a human. What do you think needs to happen for any of us here to be comfortable, whether it's us as individual represented by agents or our businesses represented by agents? What do you think that needs to happen on a security level to make sure those transactions are secure, but not only the transactions between agents are secure, but the data and the knowledge that is within the agent? Because the agent represents transactional history, it represents, maybe as if I'm a business, it represents my pricing graph, confidential stuff. So what are some of your thoughts as a security expert on this eventuality?
Yeah, so it depends if you're talking about the individual or the business, and the builder as well. How securely are the builders putting applications out there, putting tools out there? So with the inception of AI 20, 30 years ago and all the things that are coming out with it now. For example, agentic AI, building your own model, vibe coding, MCP services, and most recently A to A. The individuals, it's a lot less complicated. The businesses are the ones that need to think about what they're implementing and how they're implementing it. And a lot of the root of it still remains at the traditional cybersecurity level. We call it the Web 2 level. The big, hottest attack vector is still phishing. And we're seeing attackers implementing emerging technologies like AI to exponentially increase the impact, just like people are using it for BD and sales and research. And the thing that scares me, I know we were talking about, someone was talking about like doomsday prophecies and stuff on the last one, but when the agents, what we're researching is like when the agents start talking to each other and gathering data from other agents, how do we regulate that? How do we make sure that it's gathering the appropriate data, taking the right actions? And there are a lot of solutions, right? You could use ZK proofs to identify correct information in an unbiased way. From an individual, a lot of it relates to education and implementing malware detection. For the businesses, it relates to like the conditional and the usual pen tests. So when I say conditional, I mean like from a compliance standpoint, if you're SOC 2 compliant, going through those wheels, but also implementing things that go beyond that. Malware protection, and the tools I was talking about where 70 to 80% happens. It's like vulnerability scans, not running enough of those independently from your pen tests and smart contract audits, data leak detection for your organization, asset monitoring tools that make sure, for example, DNS takeovers is a huge topic. So like an asset monitoring tool would monitor your DNS for changes in your code of your website, like what happened with the Bybit hack. Coinbase also was related to some of that stuff. So it's going to be more complicated for a business than an individual, but the premise is the same. It's about taking the effort to implement the proper protocols to stay safe. It's a lot safer. It's a lot easier to stay safe than it is to implement an attack. So yeah.
So just before I move on to Eleni and Arnaud, between yourself from a security perspective and Julian from a trust identity perspective, do you think we have the tools in place today to enable autonomous agents to properly transact? I'm talking about your specific expertise and identity. Are you comfortable that we have the tools in place, or do you think we need new tools is it behavior change? Are we able to have autonomous agent transactions today with the identity frameworks that we have in place today to build trust, and with the security frameworks in place to generate trust?
Julian, you want me to go first? Yeah. I think with the security frameworks, we're getting there, but so think about it like the Matrix, because I know the Matrix was mentioning you have knowledge interfaces, right? Think about that as the AI, and that AI wants to learn. It's going to do what you teach it. So the way to enable better security, which is not done quite well yet for AI, is to implement something called MCP services, which are essentially chips. Don't think of it like a chip just to be simple, but think about it like knowledge that's given to the AI so that it could do things properly from a cybersecurity standpoint. And we are building that, and we're releasing it soon, but it's a service that you can give it to the AI, and it learns, and it becomes that, and it implements that, and it learns on that. So from a security standpoint, that's what you need if you want to have those swarms that Ilya and the other guys were talking about.
Julian?
I would say so, because you can basically today in weak systems fake KYC and just log in or buy accounts off the market and just use it and just do it. Do we have kind of established anything? No, far from it. It's just kind of emerging. And I'm not even talking about anything decentralized, right? Platform risk is just rampant, which is, I guess, why we are all here.
But just because it's bad today doesn't mean,
Yeah, right. Lots of good things happened with markets that were completely chaotic in the beginning, starting with the internet, right? So
What you're saying is it will be no worse than today. But the problem is we're going to be in a world of thousands of agents, so it extenuates the problems.
It's going to be a world of pain. It's kind of like the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't nice.
Okay.
It is all experimental. We just have to roll with it and implement.
I'm sticking with this sort of, can we ever make it work? Because I think it's good to dream, but I'm also concerned about fundamental problems to solve to make sure it does work. And the other side of the equation, of course, is if we ever have agents that are autonomous, the theory is that you could have millions of these agents running around, hopefully on blockchains, that actually are working. So, Arnaud, let's talk about the transaction side of it. I mean, I know we have my colleagues from Visa and MasterCard in the room, so you have to be a little careful, but are there tokenized card solutions really going to scale for that eventuality? Or do we have to think about something else outside of the box? What's the role of stablecoins in all this?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the scalability. I mean, there's a throughput question that you can ask, whether that's going to be there, and also the cost of the transactions, and what are the sizes of the transactions. I can imagine in an agent economy, autonomous economy, that a transaction might be a thousandth of a cent, right? How do you apply the Visa or MasterCard business model to that? How do you divvy up that 1,000th of a cent in interchange fee, issuing fee? Does it make sense to do that? And is the infrastructure scalable enough to support tens of millions of transactions per second? I'm not sure. Can it be upgraded to do that? So I think there's some fundamental constraints on the current system that would need to be resolved to support that type of application.
Stablecoins are obviously being applied today in a more generic way for remittances, payments, or anything. Do we have to rethink how stablecoins look, feel, smell for this agentic world?
Yeah, I think so. I think stablecoins you've got many different shapes. You can see there's e-money in closed loop, whitelisted environments. The enterprise blockchain projects were very permissioned, gated, very ultra centralized. I think stablecoins are doing slightly better than that, but still you've got different flavors. Now, I don't see in the foreseeable future that there's a real permissionless, decentralized agent economy where you use stablecoins to pay for transaction between agents, purely because the word agent says that you're acting on behalf of someone else, and that someone else is a real person, either buying something or selling something. Now, I already know if before I pay something, that there's probably an offline discussion saying, why am I paying this and who am I paying? I've done some identification there. So I can do a permissionless transaction from my wallet to your wallet. If somebody sends me an email with, here, pay 10 Bitcoin to this address, I'm probably not going to do it straight away, right? So there needs to be some form of trust layer. At least you need to have the ability to blacklist. If there's known fraudulent wallets or agents, there needs to be something that can protect other agents from using that. That requires centralization. That you can think of, but hang on, that's pure mitigating against fraud. Now, the base layer, the hygiene layer of identity is fundamental. In financial services, it's also compliance. So there's certain regulations that you need to fulfill once the money leaves the system. So you have more of a whitelisting type capability that you need there, particularly as my agent starts buying stuff on my behalf. I want to make sure that I know where my agent is transacting, right, and which environment. So there's a delegated responsibility to do the right thing. That requires whitelisting as well, further centralization. Then you can start thinking about closed loop. So I think the tension, there's an enormous tension between fully permissionless, decentralized, and the autonomous economy in the context of payments. I think the two are difficult to resolve.
That's always in payments. But let me actually push that envelope out, because one of the exciting areas, of course, is that it can become permissionless. And if we can capture my preferences, and even from a merchant perspective, if somehow in the autonomous agent, that agent represents, let's say, the merchant's understanding of their customer base, who's a loyal customer, who's upsold. It knows the price curve around, like when do they give discounts, when not. Do you foresee, Eleni, do you see merchants ever being comfortable with allowing these agents to transact with their business logic, I guess, embedded in perhaps a smart contract? Talk to me about like how you see that world happening with agents and in merchants.
So the way we think about merchant payments is how do you solve the problems of a merchant that happen before and after the payment? And if you can solve their problems in either of those steps, then you win the right to do the payment. And I think a lot of what everyone on this panel has said is really about how do we solve those problems? How do we have identity so that before the payment happens, you know it's a trusted party, or that it's secure and not going to steal my data, or someone is whitelisted into an ecosystem. And if you can figure that out, then you get the right to do the payment itself. We end up focusing on the flow of sort of after the payment and winning the next one. So once the payment takes place, if you're a merchant, you know you have all this back office work. You need to figure out who paid for it, where they send the receipt, is there a chargeback, how does this fit into my model of which products are selling and which ones are not. And the way that we think that is best solved is with data. And once you have accessible data about, let's say, the agent that is making a payment, you as a merchant can start to make smarter decisions about how do you treat other agents. And so I don't think it's a tomorrow thing we'll see, but I do see something that can exist perhaps in the next 5 or 10 years as these questions of how do we make it easier for agents to pay each other get solved, and then how do we use that new world to make better decisions in the future?
I guess what concerns me here is that, like, so you've spoken correctly about, so the merchant has to capture all this data about the customer, the transaction. It has to populate its accounting systems, its ERP, its CRM. If we, again, go back to this, maybe a little bit nirvana, but like thousands, millions of agents, how the heck are established current back office systems of merchants going to ever cope with that?
Great tee up for Loop. So, I mean, what we're focused on is if we're going to rebuild the way payments work, we should build them better. And I guess I apologize to Visa and MasterCard, but in a little bit, it's a closed loop system. You swipe your credit card, they know everything about the purchase, or perhaps your billing system knows everything about the purchase, and the merchant doesn't. And so blockchain is a great platform to be able to store data that can be encrypted, so it is private, but decrypted by parties that you do want to know about that payment. And it's most easily paired with an on-chain payment because literally that receipt is actually on-chain. I go to pay someone and there is a transaction hash proving the information moved. What doesn't exist is the information behind that hash, right? What did I buy? Who did I buy it from? That pairs very well with identity systems where you can white label who bought what, and then you can store that receipt in a way that can be encrypted and revealed by the parties in the transaction. And that leads to bigger economic opportunities for the people involved and solves real pain points like chargebacks and sending the receipt to the end customers. So you can have customer service that can best handle, disputes.
We're coming to an end here. There's obviously thousands of open-ended questions. I'm going to bring things down to earth with a bump talking about compliance. But Arnaud, do you ever see agents needing to be regulated to be compliant? Will that ever happen? Can it ever happen? Or are you suggesting no, it won't? But the only way it will happen is if that agent is mapped to a particular organization that then has the ultimate responsibility for that transaction that happens there. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the codes of law probably will take a while before they include agents in there.
They took long enough for stablecoins, didn't they?
Well, exactly. But I think it's very difficult to decouple that. If you see how much effort is going into controlling use of cash in normal society, to have unknown entities transacting millions without any visibility or transparency there and any rules, I think that's a very difficult one to do. So the agents are acting on someone's behalf, and I think that person will need to follow regulations for some time to come. I was thinking about the earlier discussion about all companies being run by AIs. Maybe the regulator gets run by AIs. If the company makes a mistake, breaches a rule, the regulator hits the kill switch on particular functions. Maybe that's a good way,
maybe that's it.
As a society.
Yeah, we can build a kill switch into the smart contract. That's
Exactly,
true.
but it's a hard one. I mean, the one thing that came to mind to me as well is, and I had this discussion with my colleagues on it, the travel rule is an enormous pain, right, in payments. How is it going to work with agents? I mean, technically, they would be self-custodied wallets, so they would be exempted from the travel rule, but their masters are not. So I don't know how that...
You're glad you're not a regulator, is what you're saying. Okay, we're going to end on that. So basically, we got, if you ever want to speak, these gentlemen and ladies are going to be here this evening. So anything on identity, speak to Julian. On merchant acceptance, speak to Eleni. On stablecoins, speak to Arnaud. And on security, speak to Charles. Thank you very much.